Hello, 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 hello. It's Dr. Obidi here. I am so excited to have you guys join us today for an awesome time. We are going to be talking all about breastfeeding, sharing some fantastic tips, debunking some myths. It is going to be wonderful. And I am going to be doing that with a dear friend, and she's going to be coming on in a second. Let's see here. All right. So I hope you've had a fantastic day. We are going to be talking about breastfeeding, debunking all the myths about breastfeeding, and more importantly, answering your questions. So just get ready for a fantastic time. And I am going to be doing this with a dear friend, Dr. Rubin, and she's a pediatrician and a certified lactation consultant. So I am waiting for her to come on here and we will get this started. And one of the wonderful things I want to, yeah, there we go. All right, so let's see here. Figure out how to do this. Okay, so I think I just did. There we go.
Hey.
How
Yay.
are you? Yes. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am fantastic. So, like I said, guys, we are going to be talking all about breastfeeding today, sharing some fantastic tips, debunking some myths, and no better person to do that with me today than my dear friend, Dr. Rubin. And it's going to be wonderful. And more importantly, we want to be able to answer your questions and cover things to make sure that you're set up to succeed when it comes to breastfeeding. Well, I am going to just have you kick it off by introducing yourself and telling us how you got into this line of work.
Sure. So, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I I am a general pediatrician. I'm Cindy Rubin, and
Yes.
I'm a general pediatrician, and I live and work in the suburbs of Chicago. And I had been doing general pediatrics as an outpatient physician for years when I had my own children and I breastfed. And I had a lot of trouble. And I realized when that happened that people need help. And, looking
Mm-hmm.
back, even though I did reach out and I did get help, I didn't realize all the resources that were out there.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I got extra training and I started really providing the time that was needed in clinic to be able to take care of moms who were struggling. And
Wonderful.
yeah, and I just absolutely love it.
Ah, excellent. Well, tell you what, guys, this is why I've been looking forward to this because breastfeeding. Well, hi there, German. It's good to see you. And Hotcakes 139. Well, thank you for joining us. Like I said, we're going to be talking about breastfeeding here with no other than a dear friend, Dr. Cindy Rubin, a lactation consultant and a pediatrician as well, just like me. And Dr. Obidi, if we haven't met, I'm a pediatrician. I have been practicing for over 17 years, taking care of well over 1,000 kids at this point. And one of the things I've seen is that the whole concept or the whole idea of feeding your baby is always a very one that can be full with a lot of anxiety, wondering if you're going to do this right. Moms already struggling with all kinds of things, making sure that they're doing things the right way. And so breastfeeding is one of those areas where it can cause a lot of concern for moms. I want to first of all say, everyone, guys, that this is going to be a safe place. If you've heard any of my content or know anything about me, this is a safe place. Okay, it's not going to be any bashing about you must breastfeed or anything along those lines. It's going to be really providing you the information you need, more importantly answering your questions so that we can provide you all the information and support you need so you can do what's best for your baby, as you said. Okay, so I'm going to actually ask you, Cindy, that really leads me to one of the things I want to first ask you is the moms who aren't who right now there's going to be some moms who've already decided they want to breastfeed, and we're going to talk about how to provide some support. There are going to be some moms who have already decided they want to formula feed, and that's wonderful also. We'll probably provide some support and some tips also, how they can do that, if they're thinking of breastfeeding as well. But there are some moms who are still trying to decide if they want to breastfeed or not. They're thinking through it. They're thinking through some of the, things that may be concerns. I don't know, what tips would you have for a mom who's still sort of, in that spot where she's trying to decide what she wants to do to feed her baby?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that, as you said, the most important thing is that you need to do what works for you. And you may not know that yet, but what works for one person is not the same as what works for another person. And you are the mom, and you get to decide. And if that includes breastfeeding, wonderful. And I want you to be able to have the resources to do that. And if it's formula, that's wonderful too. And if it's some combination thereof, that's great too. And it doesn't have to be all or none. So I think sometimes when people are trying to decide, they picture it having to be all or none, but it's not true. And for various reasons, sometimes it can't be all or none, or it can't be all. So then we can do something that we call inclusive breastfeeding, which is
I like that, inclusive breastfeeding.
Also, but also using other methods of feeding your baby. And that's one thing to keep in mind, is that there are options out there. I think one thing is, if you're considering it at all, to look for a pediatrician who is knowledgeable and supportive of breastfeeding, so that they can help you through that journey if you decide to do so. Also talking to your OB about it as well, to figure out whether or not there's anything that maybe puts you at risk for having more difficulties, because there can be some difficulties. And I think you want to look at just, what do you picture when you picture those first months with your baby? Does breastfeeding seem like something that could be a part of that? And if you're unsure, there's no reason that you can't try it out, see how it feels, and go from there. The nice thing is that most hospitals have nurses as well as lactation consultants time that can really help you in those first few days. So it's a good time to take advantage of having those resources to get things started.
That is so true. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I always tell that to moms also, while they're in, especially for those who are doing hospital births, while they're at the hospital. So even if you're not sure, this is the best place to try it out, because you get the best support, to help you decide, what you might do when you get home. And hey, listen, guys, if you have questions for Dr. Rubin, go ahead and pop them in the chat. I would love to be able to get to your questions, while we talk about some common ones moms have, but definitely want you to go ahead and put that in there, okay? So one of the things you said was, you're planning on, you've planned how you're going to breastfeed and do that successfully. But I have also found over the years that there are times when that doesn't go well. There are times where, our best laid plans just fall apart. How does a mom deal with that? Because again, one of the things I'm passionate about is really trying to, as much as possible, set up a mom where she is not dealing with mom guilt, because it's still so much precious time with your precious little one, right? And so this is one area where moms can be riddled with mom guilt, feeling like this didn't go as planned, this beautifully laid out plan and vision I had in my head, feeding my, baby, breastfeeding, it hasn't gone as well. And so how do you sort of talk a mom through that, or coach a mom through that, or sort of provide some support?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that I tell moms when they come to see me, and oftentimes they're seeing me when things really aren't going as planned, and they may have already received help from a number of people, is that breastfeeding is not what makes you a mom.
That is so good, guys. Listen to that.
It's the snuggles, it's the love that makes you a mom. And if breastfeeding can be a part of that, great. Even a few drops is so beneficial to your baby if you choose to do that. And, I have moms who are just working so, so hard to produce, let's say, um, milk production is the problem, to produce
Yeah.
more milk, and are so stressed out about it and only look at the kind of glass half empty.
Yes.
And I tend to be a negative thinking person myself, and so I totally get it. But really, look at the glass half full. You gave your baby an ounce of your breast milk today. And I
Mm-hmm.
try to help moms kind of look at that side of things because, like we said, it's not all or nothing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also, sometimes working so hard and getting so little back can be
Mm-hmm.
really kind of defeating and
Yeah.
exhausting. And it's also okay and absolutely necessary, really, to listen to your own needs too. I mean,
Mm.
obviously, we want to do what's best for our baby, but part of what's best for our baby is taking care of ourselves. And
Oh, that's so
sometimes the
true.
physical and mental trauma, really, that
Mm-hmm.
can go along with struggling with breastfeeding is not worth those few drops. And so that's something that, again, having somebody who can really help you to figure out, is there more that I can do?
Yeah.
Have I kind of reached the most that I'm going to make?
Mm-hmm.
Or, whatever the issue may be, so that you can start to look at your kind of revamp that image that you had.
Yep. Yep.
It may not be exactly what you planned. It may be able to be a little bit different, and it may be something that is just so far from what you had looked at that it's better to put it behind you and move forward. And again, that's okay. I'm obviously very, very pro breastfeeding, but I want that to be done in a way that is safe and comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and doable for a mom too.
Ah, that is so good. And by the way, if you're joining us, we are with Dr. Cindy Rubin. She's a pediatrician and a certified lactation and breastfeeding consultant. And we're discussing all things breastfeeding, providing support in a very non-judgmental space, a very safe space to get our questions answered. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat. We'll love to get to them. Or just say hi. Just say hi. Give us some love. Hit those hearts. Would love to be able to just know that we are providing some value for you. But you said something about looking at the glass half full, not half empty, and walking a mom through. Okay, um, how much of a toll is your mental health on caring for your baby? And I literally just had to walk a mom through this. I was saying about 3 weeks ago. And she was working so hard with getting her milk production up, feeding her baby, and he was having so many weight issues. She was so distraught over the whole thing. And I really had to actually literally talk about exactly what you just said. That your mental health and your state of mind, goes so much farther in caring well for your baby than the breast milk you're going to give at this point, and you really need to be in a good space and enjoy this precious moment. He's going to be like, a toddler running around the whole place causing chaos, and this
Exactly.
wonderful period will be gone forever. So enjoy it. But there are moms who may be struggling with milk production, and what tips can you give them to at least try to see if they can get that up? Because there are instances where you can actually get your milk production up and provide more, have more milk available for your baby, and actually tide you through this season. So, are there any tips you can leave, folks?
Sure, sure. So, many people say, oh, everybody can produce enough milk. And I think that's less and less true these days because, people who weren't getting pregnant and having kids 30 years ago are now. And
Yeah.
so there may be more risks. The same thing that maybe led you to need to use fertility treatments may be the same thing that is making it more difficult for you to produce milk. And so I think there is more of a risk for it, and we need to be aware of that and support moms through it. Things that are really important to know about breastfeeding and how it works. The two things that are going to help to produce milk are frequent stimulation of the breast, of the nipple.
Mm-hmm.
So either the baby suckling or pumping, and frequent emptying of the breast. And sometimes it's that second one that isn't either
Mm-hmm.
known about or considered. And so it really is important to be doing both of those things. So making sure not only your baby's at the breast and suckling, but actually getting the milk and emptying your breast frequently. Or pumping would potentially need to do the job.
Yeah.
So that's just something to know about the mechanics. And so things that can help are doing that more frequently. So having your
Mm-hmm.
baby at the breast as frequently as possible. And when that may not be doing the job, or let's say your baby just fed and the baby wasn't full and you supplement with whatever it is you're supplementing with, put that baby skin to skin. So do skin to skin as frequently as possible, because what that does is it helps you and your hormones and making more
Mm.
milk. It helps your baby to stay interested in being there and close to
Okay.
you and interested and happy in this environment
Mm.
at your
Mm-hmm.
chest. And it sometimes helps the baby to actually end up latching better than they had been if
Mm.
you kind of put a baby here and let them find their way to the breast. It doesn't always happen that way,
Yeah.
but it gives you that experience, which again, going back to breastfeeding isn't what makes you a mom. I mean,
Mm.
having that time with your baby that is pleasant and
Precious,
you're
right?
right there together is more important than whether or not your baby's getting milk that way. So doing that as frequently as possible and trying to take the pressure off of yourself is important.
Mm-hmm.
There's also several herbs out there that unfortunately we don't have tons of evidence on the herbs
Mm-hmm.
yet, but a few that do tend to help moms make milk, make more milk. One is called goat's rue, another is called moringa,
Mm.
and there's various reasons why one might use one versus the other,
Okay.
but none of that is going to work without also doing the frequent emptying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
important to remember.
Mm.
Those are the things that first come to mind. And then
No,
again,
that's good.
reaching out for help.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're not
I'm glad you
alone.
mentioned that also. You're not alone. There's usually help available. Your pediatrician, maybe a lactation consultant in the local area. Even if your insurance doesn't cover one resource oftentimes is the birth hospital where you give birth. Oftentimes those lactation consultants are open to you reaching back out to ask questions or get some support that way. And it's so interesting because we have a question from dear German. I hope I said that right, but it's almost like the other opposite, right? And so they say, what is considered an oversupply of milk, and what are some tips to manage oversupply?
So that's a really good question too. And you're right. Sometimes people who have struggled to produce milk think, oh my gosh, somebody has so much milk. I wish I could be in that place. But it
Mm-hmm.
actually comes with its own set of problems,
Mm-hmm.
potentially for the mom as well as the baby. And so our bodies naturally tend to produce a little bit more in the beginning when if that supply and demand is not really what's controlling our milk
Mm-hmm.
production in the beginning. And so our bodies just kind of get revved up, produce a lot of milk, and that can sometimes be uncomfortable. It can be
Mm-hmm.
for a mom if she's engorged. It can be more difficult for a baby to latch. Sometimes it can lead to problems like blood ducts and mastitis. And
Mm-hmm.
generally, if that might happen early, and then over time, your body gets to know how much it really needs to make, and that tends to settle down. But for some women, they just continue to make more milk than they need to.
Mm-hmm.
There's not an exact number that gives you an answer for that, because it also kind of has to do with your body's ability to store the milk. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. But if you think about the typical needs of a baby, So most breastfed babies are going to take somewhere between 24 and 30 ounces of milk a day. Believe it or not, no matter how old they are, once they're about a month old till a year, that stays about the same. And so if you know that you are producing 50 ounces a day,
Yeah.
that's definitely a pretty good oversupply.
Oversupply.
40 is also an oversupply, not as excessive. Even 30 for a baby that's at 24, you may be making
some abundance there.
So so sometimes people, so first you want to look at, am I causing this accidentally? So if breastfeeding is going well, there's not necessarily a reason to pump.
That's a good point, right?
In the beginning.
That is a great point.
Yeah. So sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to be going back to work and I need to create a freezer stash or something like that. So I'm going to start pumping right away and storing. But there's really not a need to do that. And it can give your body the message that it needs to make more milk than your baby actually needs, because you're feeding your baby and you're feeding a freezer.
Yeah.
So if you realize, okay, that's what's happening, and I feel like I have to keep pumping because there's so much milk there, you want to very slowly and gradually ease up on the amount that you are pumping. And again, that can be done with the help of a lactation professional, or kind of looking it up and finding little tips and tricks. And it should be done relatively slowly, but backing off on that is important. There are also some medications and herbs that can help in extreme situations. And then in between those are, just again, watching your baby's needs and following your baby's cues. Making sure that you're not necessarily feeding your baby just for comfort, though breastfeeding can be very comforting, and there's nothing wrong with letting babies comfort at the breast. But sometimes we interpret every single thing as hunger, and babies enjoy being at the breast, so they eat and eat and eat and maybe make more milk than they really needed to grow. And so looking at that and other things that you can probably learn from Dr. Obidi's newborn preparation course, other ways to feed a baby or other tips and tricks to look at that might help. And to kind of trust your body and trust your baby as well. I think that's one of the most important things. And it's really hard to do because people ask me all the time, how do I know my baby is getting enough? How do I know they're getting too much? How do I know they're getting too little? Sometimes we don't, and we have to trust that we are going to be getting that baby weighed at their pediatrician frequently, and so that's what's going to tell us. Good pediatrician is going to be seeing a newborn fairly frequently, and even after that, during that first year, you're seeing your pediatrician every 2 to 3 months. So if you show up and you thought that your baby was getting enough, and it turns out they didn't gain weight quite as much as they should have, then you go back and kind of reevaluate. Do we need to work on increasing things or supplementing, or vice versa? If your baby's always at the breast, and your baby suddenly went from the 30th percentile to the 90th
back up a little bit.
Back off a little, maybe. So I've seen babies who do that, and they really just get comfort at the breast, and they turn out fine. If that's what works, and that's okay too.
Well, this is all such fantastic, and just if you're joining us, this is we're with Dr. Rubin, pediatrician and lactation consultant, and we're just talking about all things breastfeeding, giving some great tips. We talked about oversupply, undersupply. We talked about what to do if breastfeeding isn't, working out the way you wanted it to work. So definitely go back and watch, give us some love. We'd love that. But more importantly, though, we want to answer your questions. So if you have questions about anything related to breastfeeding, or wondering if you're still thinking about it, not sure, hi, it's good to see you, Cynthia. Just pop that in the chat, because we want to get to your exact questions. You said something about, and how do I know baby is getting enough? And one of the things I always cover with parents, especially for that first week of life, after the first week, the simple formula breaks down. But I say you want as many wet diapers and poopy diapers as how old they are in days, at the minimum. And that's sort of nice rough guide. So if your baby's 3 days old, you want about three wet diapers and three poopy diapers in a 24-hour period. It may seem like, oh, only three? Well, at 3 days old, that's usually about much what you would need, and most times babies are doing more than that. But at a minimum, in that first week of life, that's a rough guide to help you see if you're getting enough. So if your baby is 5 days old, five wet diapers, five poopy diapers, after seven, it seems to break down because babies can poop like, once a week or every other day or multiple times. Most babies are actually doing it every time you feed them, but that's a nice rough guide if you're not quite sure. So that's all really great. One of the things with breastfeeding is sometimes that ends up being a painful process, and that can be discouraging too, and maybe even prevent mom from actually breastfeeding as well as she wants to, or just stopping and switching to something else. So, what are some tips you can do to maybe one, prevent that from happening if it's possible? And of course, like we talked about earlier on, best laid plans may not work out quite the way you planned, right? So if you do have either just painful nipples or a cracked nipple, what can you do to sort of help there?
Yeah, good question. So one thing that can help with prevention is if you have the opportunity to do it, spending time, as soon as your baby is born, having your baby spend some time again on your chest, skin to skin. What that does is it kind of kicks everything into gear, both for your own body and the production of milk, but for your baby using their own natural newborn reflexes to find their way to your breast.
Best, yes.
And that leads to what we call a baby-led latch. So instead of us trying to struggle to position the baby in the best way and get your baby on, the baby figures that out. And that tends to lead to not only continued interest in the breast and getting the production going, but also a deeper latch and a more comfortable latch, and for you, and more effective for the baby to be able to transfer that milk better. So attempting to do that if possible. It doesn't always work out for whatever reason. But then continuing to do that and kind of being in that position, kind of laying back and have your baby face down on your chest again, kind of helps your baby get to the breast and figure out how to latch on their own. Sometimes you need an extra pair of hands to help with that. But that can help. Another thing is just knowing that breastfeeding should not be painful and persistently painful. Sometimes it's uncomfortable in the beginning. If a baby is not latched deeply enough, it can be uncomfortable and it can be painful. If that's happening, you need to take your baby off and try to latch again. There's a lot of great videos out there that you can watch even before you have the baby to see what that looks like, and I can post some in the comments when this is
that'd be great.
When this is posted, some good videos to see what that looks like. And it takes practice. This is definitely a learning curve for both you and your baby, so it can take time and it can be frustrating at first, but often if you are able to get there, that pain can really decrease to the point where you may feel a little discomfort in the first few seconds after latching a baby, but the baby's job is to get the nipple to kind of be pulled out and reach the place on the roof of the baby's mouth where it needs to be and where it's going to be comfortable for you. And that can take a few seconds. But oftentimes I'll hear, well, it hurts a little bit in the beginning and then it eases up pretty quickly and I don't really notice it the rest of the feeding. That sounds like probably it's a pretty good latch.
Yeah.
If it's hurting through your entire feeding or in between feedings persistently, then there may be something else going on, and that's an important time to reach out to reassess the latch or look at some other things that can sometimes lead to
No, that's really good. That's really good. This reminds me of something when we had my wife and I have three kids, and I think it was maybe the second or even the third. She's like, "Hey, listen, it's always going to be painful initially, okay? Stop telling me it's not supposed to hurt. It's going to be painful initially, and after a few days, we can get past that point." So, which also brings us to maybe some of the myths that people have thought about when it comes to breastfeeding, which one of them is this is supposed to be easy, right? Say something about that, because I think it's helpful if you go into this prepared mentally also. When I teach in the newborn preparation course and we're talking about sleeping, I say, hey, listen, I'm not going to I'm just not going to sugarcoat things. Sleep in the first couple of weeks is difficult, and and it's good when you sort of are mentally prepared that this is going to be a trying period, because then you can also make some plans to make it less trying, right? So talk to that, that breastfeeding is supposed to be easy. Come on, I mean, this is like nature, right?
Right. Yeah, you hear it all the time that it's supposed to be natural. It's the most natural thing. And you see pictures, social media, right? Everything is perfect
Mm-hmm.
out there, and it looks
Yes.
like it should be all, rainbows and puppy
Unicorns.
dogs and everything. And
Uh-huh.
it's really often not. I mean, to be honest, in my general pediatrics practice, I was usually a little bit skeptical if a first time mom told me that everything was fine with the breastfeeding, because
Mm-hmm.
usually it's hard, whether it be pain or just worry or exhaustion,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So it is hard, and we think back, yes, it's natural and it's been going on forever, but in the olden days, if it we were our societies were set up very differently. We
Mm-hmm.
we all slept in the same room,
Mm-hmm.
maybe right next to us.
Yes. Yes.
That is not considered safe now.
Yeah.
But then that makes the breastfeeding a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So, figuring that out, there were usually your mom and grandma and all of those other people
Great
also
support around,
around
right?
so they can help you out. And now
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to find people
Mm-hmm.
who have experience in your own family, in your own circle, who can help
Mm-hmm.
you, or who even support the fact that you want to do it. I think moms here a lot of the time will just give them some formula. That's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily helpful
Yes.
if you're really working hard at the breastfeeding. You need
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get support in a different way. And so, right, so understanding that there will probably be some blips in the road, and just knowing that there can be difficulties, and maybe looking up who your resources are before you have the baby, so you have
Mm-hmm.
somebody on, speed dial.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Having a lactation consultant come over to your house in the first week after your baby's born can be valuable, even if you think everything's going well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but again, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of
Mm-hmm.
cure. So using those resources that are out there, and insurance is by and far paying for more of that too.
Which is great, which is certainly great. We're going to start winding down here. Again, if you have any questions for Dr. Rubin, please put that in the chat. We would love in the comments. We would love to be able to answer a specific question if you have one. But as we wind up here, let's maybe talk about the whole concept of pumping and dumping. And, is that ever appropriate? When might we want to think about that? And maybe along those lines, also thinking through maybe moms who may want to drink coffee or, a glass of wine or something along those lines after baby is born and they're breastfeeding, how do they manage all those things, or her diet in general?
Right. So, well, diet in general, that's a good question. So, generally, the rule of thumb is that when you're breastfeeding, your body's going to need about 500 more calories a day.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some benefits to that, being able to eat
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more, maybe, if that's something that's pleasant to you. Um, and so, it's that's just remembering again to take care of yourself. We get become
Yeah,
so focused on taking care of the baby, but we have to remember that this is a new mom.
that is so
And
true.
yeah, yeah. And so we really need to take care of ourselves and make sure we've got our little play space set aside with our water and our snacks and the remote control and our phone and whatever we need so that we can more comfortably take care of ourselves while we're taking care of our baby.
Yeah.
A little nursing station is helpful. You can definitely drink caffeinated beverages and alcohol when you're nursing. There are some rules of thumb about it, which are not hard and fast, but if you're not feeling the effects of the alcohol anymore, then your body has taken care of it and metabolized it. And so it's not just like that alcohol all goes to your boobs,
straight through,
just sitting in your breast, waiting to go to your baby. But generally, if you are considering having a drink, then having a drink right after nursing or pumping, so it gives your body a chance to
enough time
that by the next time you need to feed your baby can be helpful. And one, maybe 2 cups of coffee a day could be acceptable.
So she can function.
Yeah, right, exactly. But you may notice some side effects, like your baby may be a little fussier after you have coffee or jittery or something like that. And so you have to weigh those pros and cons and know that it can potentially affect your baby. Pumping and dumping, super important to talk about. So, unfortunately, in the medical community and medical schools and residency programs, we physicians do not get very much breastfeeding education. And in order to, a lot of physicians therefore kind of want to err on the side of caution and recommend not giving milk to a baby when you're nursing. And, specifically, unfortunately, it's really hard to do studies on babies who are babies just in general, as well as babies that are breastfeeding and pregnant moms. And so a lot of the information we have has to be extrapolated to a certain extent. And so depending on what resource you look at, it may actually look like you do have to pump and dump. So again, knowing where to go, there is an absolutely fantastic resource called Infant Risk, where physicians as well as parents who are in need of this information can find answers about whether or not they need to pump and dump or what the risks and benefits are. And it's actually pretty rare. So just knowing that it's pretty rare that you really do need to do
That's
that.
good to know.
If somebody tells you that you do, maybe getting a second opinion. Call me. Email me. I can help you answer those questions.
And we're definitely going to have all your information, soon. But also maybe later on we'll put that the name of that resource as well in the comments, for those who are going to watch this as a replay. But this is so true. And as we wrap up here, it just brings me. I remember a story when. I think this was our first baby, actually, our first daughter, who's like, almost 20 next week years old. But, it was so difficult for my wife to get breastfeeding going that first few days, and of course, I'm a pediatrician. I'm supposed to know what to do, no pressure, right? So this was just a crazy, crazy period. And I kid you not, so at one point, I think maybe this was day 2 or 3, maybe even 4, my wife was like, that's it. I am not breastfeeding anymore. This is ridiculous. It's painful. It's uncomfortable. She's not latching. She's not getting enough, boo, boo, boo. I am just going to bottle feed. That's it. Tomorrow, go get some formula. We're bottle feeding. And I kid you not, the very next time, this girl latches on like crazy. Like, it was almost immediate. Like, really? If we knew that's all it took was to threaten you, we would have done that on day 1. But I think maybe part of what was going on there, though, is because she had mentally decided she was going to just bottle feed, there was some decrease in her stress level. She was more relaxed. She was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be able to breastfeed my baby. I'm going to be able to feed my baby, come tomorrow, so I can relax knowing she's going to be okay. And that level of just decrease in her stress level somehow allowed this to happen a little better. I wish I could tell you all you need to do is threaten your baby and it'll go well. But, what I can say is trying to see what you can do to have just decrease your stress level, just be more present, enjoying the moment, knowing that yes, it is difficult, but this will pass. All those can really be great tips to help you just be in a better space to give this the best opportunity for it to happen, more successfully. But listen, before we let you go, tell us where people can find you and how can they get more information, how can they work with you, how can they, contact you. Just let us know.
Sure. So the name of my practice is In Touch Pediatrics and Lactation, and the website is www.intouchpediatrics.com. And through my site, you can follow my newsletter. You can sign up for my newsletter, my email list, and my email is on there, phone number's on there. You can actually text the phone number that's listed there if you have a question.
Nice.
And, I'm happy to help anyone who needs help. Also, lactation professionals who may be watching this Instagram Live, I'm happy to help guide you through complicated problems too. There's a scope of practice that sometimes gets reached with more complicated breastfeeding problems that lactation consultants might need the help of a medical provider to go a little bit further into the evaluation and management of that issue. And so there are pediatricians and OBs and family practice docs out there, more and more of us now, who have received some extra training and are able to delve into these more complicated things and work with your other lactation professionals and you and your family to help you have the closest possible to that picture that you imagine.
Yes.
Get you through. And to remind you that you're human and it's okay to recognize your own limits and move on if you're just at that point, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so very much. That was a perfect way to end, just reminding people that you're human and, this is a new experience, even if you've had 3 babies, it's still a new experience between you and the next one. And so give yourself grace. Please go ahead and follow Dr. Rubin, In Touch Pediatrics and Lactation. You'll have great information, a ton of wealth of information, and you definitely want the best information you can. So you're not like Dr. Una Chuku, who is a pediatrician who threw her breast pump across the room because she was so frustrated, right?
I hope there was nobody standing there and it just hit the wall.
Right? But definitely, we love to provide this information. And, go ahead and follow me. I have great information for you, just all things newborns. There's a newborn preparation course for moms who are going to be expecting a baby coming up in September. Just get on the wait list so you're notified when it's open for enrollment. Thank you so much, guys, for stopping by. And just go back and watch this replay. It was a wealth of information. We talked all about, what to expect with breastfeeding, and if things aren't working out quite as well, what to do, and what to do for milk supply, and what to do for pumping and oversupply, and a bunch of great information. So hope this is helpful for you all. Thank you for stopping by. It's good to see you all. Go ahead and share this with a friend. If you have a mom in your life who is currently breastfeeding, and might be having some issues, go ahead and share this with her. Or if you have a mom who is expecting and who's pregnant, and go ahead and share this as well, because this will really give them the best information they need, and also the resources, which we're going to put some of that later on in the comments, that can help them just get all the information they need to make this successful. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cynthia. It's good to see you all. Thanks for stopping by. Take care now.
And I'll check the comments later. So if you have questions that you weren't able to ask, you can put them in the comments. And
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well. Thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure doing this with you. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.